Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Finding the Right Holiday Audiences Through Meaningful Insights. My name is Ricky Bijlani. I am the Senior Director of Marketing here at AUDIENCEX. I just want to thank you for taking a bit of your time today to join us. I'm going to give this a couple more minutes to let people finish joining us. And while I do, I'll go over a couple quick notes before we get started. First, we will indeed be sending a recording of this webinar to all registrants afterwards, so everyone can keep a lookout for that. Additionally, we will be taking some time to answer any questions that you may have at the end of today's presentation. So if you do have any, you can go ahead and submit them at any time via the Zoom's Q&A feature right at the bottom of the interface. So today, AUDIENCEX is joined with our partners at Dstillery for a discussion centered around how marketers can analyze and leverage data that can help them identify, effectively address, and confidently expand their audiences to retain and acquire new customers this holiday season. So today's agenda is broken up into four sections. First, we will be sharing the holiday landscape, followed by audience insights, and then addressability, and end with the audience Q&A. Here to guide us all through a bit of that today, I am pleased to introduce our speakers, Max Yang, who is our VP of Ad Operations at AUDIENCEX, and from Dstillery, Gilad Barash, who is a VP of Analytics. Max and Gilad, thank you very much for being here today and joining in this discussion. I know it's going to be great. Before diving into our conversation, if you can briefly introduce yourself, including your role and background. Max, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Max, VP of Ad Operations over at AX or AUDIENCEX. I've been with AUDIENCEX for about 2 years now and head up our paid media teams and covers everything from programmatic to search and social. And we've been dealing with a lot of kind of data operations as well, and have been working quite closely with Dstillery for a while. And I'm happy to bring kind of like my 15-year experience working in the ad space. Prior to AUDIENCEX, I was working for Nexstar, which is a big media conglomerate, and we had a whole network of 100 broadcast stations. And so I was part of an agency services team based out of Austin. And then prior to that, I was working a bit in data operations for a subsidiary that was acquired by Nexstar and focused on data operations, working with the DMP and doing a lot of taxonomy work and making sure that the data was all prepped and ready for activation. So really glad to be a part of the discussion today and look forward to a really enlightening conversation. Gilad, you want to I'll hand over things to you.
All right, so hi everybody. My name is Gilad Barash, and I have been with Dstillery for about 9 years now, working on extracting stories from data and translating them into data-driven decision intelligence tools to meet different business goals for stakeholders. My team analyzes this data and gives talks about how to extract these actionable insights from data and communicate them to stakeholders inside and outside the organization. Prior to that, I've worked at HP, I've worked at fashion tech startups, so a bunch of different things, but Dstillery is my first foray into ad tech.
Fantastic. Ricky, do you want me to continue here, or?
Yeah, go. We go over the next section here on the holiday landscape.
Okay, so we're going to start off the conversation with kind of just setting the tone, I guess you can say. In preparation for this webinar and thinking about what we want to talk about, everyone's kind of mindful of, what this season really, encapsulates in terms of things are going on from an economic perspective. So really think this season's going to be even more competitive than years past, where, we're really all grabbing for the attention of holiday shoppers. Something unique for this year in terms of significance is we're all dealing with things as it relates to record high inflation, financial vulnerabilities, and a resilient labor market, and concerns in overall kind of pricing, right, in terms of what we can buy, our essentials and luxury items and whatnot. But what's really interesting, and Gilad and I have been kind of talking about this too over the course of the last 2 weeks, And looking at some of the data, it's very clear that shoppers are planning to spend just as much as they did last year, if not more. And then more than 20%, 25%, in fact, have already started their holiday shopping. So I think it sets the tone that, we want to make sure we arm our marketers with the actionable audience data and do so quickly so that they can, perform their discovery and be able to chart out how those behaviors and those trends aggressively change over time. So it's really interesting to kind of see what the data is suggesting. And again, it's all, with an effort to try to hone in on these tendencies and these behaviors as we really kind of navigate some uncertainty, and whether that's uncertainty as it relates to addressability, to uncertainty as it is in terms of, how these customers are actually interacting with our brand and how do we capture their attention. So one of the things we wanted to kind of share was just some data that suggests in terms of how, things that are happening in our communities and in the economy are affecting our spending habits. So we see a lot of, pared back spending habits and people being more prudent about where they spend their money. And it hasn't impacted their, their out of pocket as it relates to essentials like gas and groceries and whatnot. So just sharing some numbers here in terms of where we've seen that impact, spanning everything from, again, whether people are dining out to, whether they're actually putting gas in their car and traveling, which is quite interesting considering the contrast of what we expected in terms of, how users are kind of saving up their money in terms of heading into this holiday season. And then what we're going to probably expect to see are just more conservative shoppers, people that are, coupon clippers, so to speak, seeking deals. So the shopping tendency or their spending power isn't necessarily less than too much, but more so they're going to be more prudent again about where those dollars are spent. So on that note, I'd love to kind of shift gears slightly towards looking at how we kind of arrive at looking at some of these audiences. So given the kind of the parameters of what we've kind of spoken about with tendencies and behaviors, kind of peeling back exactly what it is that we go in and do on a daily basis to help, arm campaigns and our campaign managers and our marketers and our brand customers with the insights necessary to help make some of those decisions. So for us, it's really clear at AUDIENCEX, again, we want to be able to give everyone that we work with a competitive edge by helping our brands better understand, again, some of these behaviors. And we're really glad to have a strong partner like Dstillery, in place to help us perform a lot of that discovery. Because there's a lot of insights and a lot of, tidbits of information that will really kind of tailor the decision making as it relates to targeting and optimization. And one of the key benefits is having various different signals at our disposal, right? So we want to be able to utilize those signals and perform discovery on existing customer audiences, whether that audience is onboarded via CRM data or data that were collected through pixel tagging that occurs across the site. So what you see here, just quickly at a glance, is a particular data that we collected for a luxury goods retailer with an online presence. It's an e-commerce client. And what we've done is over time, we've collected their audience and we're able to compare that audience data against essentially these high indexing holiday shopper attributes. And it's not just only limited to holiday shoppers. Obviously, the theme for this webinar is about, how we spend heading into the holiday. But what's really neat is that there's a vast array, a very expansive universe of data that's at our disposal in terms of how we want to correlate some of the behaviors that we're capturing from first-party data, and then seeing how that compares against the universe of action or activity. So it's great here that, we're at a glance, we're able to kind of see exactly which those attributes are, again, indexing at a high rate, so to speak, and understanding the composition, which is really important for our buyers, knowing that, data is there and it's actionable and it's scalable. So what happens for our campaign managers in terms of optimizing a campaign, and as we operate these, the targeting and make adjustments. One thing that's really interesting is that you can take that first party data and start to pick and choose essentially these additional user groups or audience groups that we want to be able to compare. And so we have a bunch of different attributes and modules that you can choose from as it relates to, demographics, as it relates to, behavioral, location audiences, as well as, sites that these users tend to spend their time on. And so it's really interesting to kind of be able to start to hone in on what some of these profiles, how they kind of correlate with our brand customers. And the purpose of using these kind of curated audience groups, we can really help us assist in more quickly and identifying these profiles or personas that we want to analyze against, again, this first party data set. So what we were really doing here is taking those user groups. So essentially what we have here was we had the original luxury retail brand. We took a look at site visitors that we're able to collect. And then we wanted to compare and contrast that against this holiday shopper user group. And so what we're doing here is we're looking at the performance indices, right, and the composition per attribute. And again, compare and contrast these individual attributes to kind of better determine which audiences that we should target and whether or not those target groups or user groups are scalable. And so what you see here, that overlap, what we're looking for is, again, in a simplified format, a bar chart where when you're looking at, country home decorators and apartment furniture shoppers, those would be segments that I would recommend for this retailer to kind of hone in on and possibly avoid, where comes first travelers and, Earth Day researchers where we're seeing less activity or, smaller numbers as it relates to relative index. And what's really cool about working with Dstillery is for us on the operational side, it makes it really easy for us to utilize pixels and then leveraging, past data values that we can between our, different media activation platforms and sending that granular data point over to perform more analysis, right? The idea is to be strategic about your segmentation of your customer base, being able to track them through various touch points along that customer journey, along our, kind of user experience with the brand and the site. And then we can use these specific touch points, again, to kind of enhance or bolster the analysis that we have, whether that's, a product page or an add to cart or something lower funnel like a purchase event. So it's really nice to be able to have the flexibility and agility to be able to change up the analysis based on different, again, data that's collected via different touch points. Yeah, it's really helpful because it takes the guesswork out of a lot of the analysis. So another thing that's really fantastic too, given the holiday season, everyone's working at an accelerated pace, trying to get campaigns activated and optimized, even more so at a more frequent, again, pace than we've done before. And so it's really nice to have a platform and have access to data where a lot of the analysis can be simplified. Right, we can spend a ton of time just looking at numbers and being able to plot and understand kind of like where all the relative activity is. But sometimes you just really want to be able to quickly identify the top performing audiences, right? And we can do so against 50 different behavioral, demographic, and location category groups directly in platform. So this information, I feel, for us allows us to be more agile and quicker to respond as it relates to changes that we're seeing in the data from day to day. And so we can kind of track these on an ongoing basis to understand, again, what are some of these high indexing attributes that are recommended by the system for us to go and go hunt down, essentially, right? With this particular example here, I was looking at that same retail client and casting it against coupon shoppers actually this time. So I threw that into the mix and it gave me a lot of these recommendations that both as someone who's optimizing a campaign, as well as information and insight I can share with the client, really kind of just arms us with the plethora of data that we can, again, work on and activate quickly while all having all that granular data post-campaign that flows in that we can analyze on a routine basis. So, again, shifting gears just quite a bit, we talked about, all these tactics in terms of what the operation team kind of does to, take in that data and make adjustments. But one thing we wanted to be mindful of is how this impacts, budgeting, and how it impacts allocations as it relates to strategies and tactics that are being operated. And something that's been really interesting for us is, we kind of been, polling some of our customer base, is understanding, how has all the economical factors and things that are happening, and especially surrounding the season, has impacted their, decision making as it relates to budgeting. And what we found is that a lot of the marketers are, planning to maintain all that budget, but just again, be smarter about and be prudent about where that dollar is spent. So, yeah, we want to be able to, continue to leverage budgeting. We've seen, truthfully, some, pared back budgets, which was, expected. But in doing so, it just gave us the objective, an emphasis to really hone in on how to make that, dollar work farther for us. So as we look at some of these strategies in terms of what we're advising, one of the biggest components for me, or for us in terms of looking at the data, is knowing that, like, with all the holiday shoppers that are going, holiday shopping activity that's going on, a lot of it happens in a very mobile focused environment. And given all the, updates and new enhancements as it relates to privacy policy, we've seen that there's just a growing pool of, users that are just not trackable, right? With 50% of shoppers expected to perform their holiday shopping on mobile devices as they take their devices with them. Really, it's really more important for us to ensure that the data is, or the customer base is, addressable, and to do so in a privacy compliant manner. So one thing that we are really excited to be able to leverage in working with Dstillery is, privacy by design targeting solutions. One of which, Gilad will go into more detail, which is called ID Free, but it was developed with Dstillery to help bolster the data afforded with pixels and cookies in a traditional sense, right? And so there's this new methodology, knowing that there is a significant size of audience that we really haven't been kind of keeping tabs of, or sorry, not keeping tabs of, but trackable. We wanted to understand what are the mechanisms and what are the methodologies we can utilize to continue to try to, reach those users without the use of, quote unquote, invasive cookies. So again, the objective is expanding into cookieless users, right? And being able to, continue with that reach. And then what Gilad will get into, which is really kind of targeting the moment and understanding, how to best leverage this technology and when to best use it. So that just kind of setting the table there, we know there's ever-changing privacy regulations, and changing legislation will only increase the difficulty that we have with addressing being able to have an addressable user base. It's impacting targeting, it's impacting tracking. We all know that, and so it's the ability for a campaign to perform moving forward is really going to be contingent upon leveraging some of these ID-free type technologies, right? Again, so IAB recently just released a lot of documentation that they're working on to kind of help set the standard for how some of these privacy policies are meant to be, activated or enabled on the systems. So continued work there, making sure that everything that we do at AUDIENCEX and working with Dstillery is compliant to all the changing data privacy policies. And then just to kind of just finish off these notes about how privacy is obviously a big topic at hand. Just some data that we've collected that really kind of underline the fact of privacy and putting more control for users in terms of how they determine when and where they want to get tracked. It's just an increasing activity in terms of understanding how the users are looking to opt out, right? And how this has actually created a significant portion of the traffic to be deemed untrackable. So love to hear about how Dstillery has put some technology in place to combat that. Gilad, you want to take things over? I'm happy to hand things over to you so we can learn a little bit more about addressability.
Yep, let's do that. So,
are you able to see the screen okay?
yeah, I'm seeing the screen. All right, so hi, everybody. So, while we traditionally think about engaging with customers who are individually addressable, consumers who opt in to sharing their information and utilizing third-party cookies that are trackable, we know that this is becoming a smaller and smaller slice of the consumer universe. Because of the impending deprecation of cookies, but also because in general, the trend towards privacy is getting more and more pronounced, with users opting out of tracking abilities, with platforms sharing less of their data. And so that first party data for marketers is becoming more and more important. And so we know that, as we said, as I said, that the cookies, third-party cookies, are on their way to being deprecated. So the question is whether it's possible to engage with these non-tracked consumers in a meaningful way, which really are the broad and becoming a broader base of the consumer base. Next slide. And at Dstillery, we address this growing challenge with our ID-free custom AI solution. This is a solution that allows predictive targeting without actually tracking your customers. We combine a brand's first-party data with an understanding of targetable moments across the internet using our proprietary technology that we call the map of the internet, which I will explain in a minute. But the result is meaningful and accurate engagement with consumers that don't have identifiers and are not subject to tracking, which is something new that has not been done before. Next slide. So what is this map of the internet? It's something that we build. It is based on AI. It's a neural network process that extracts patterns from millions of individual opt-in digital journeys to build a 128-dimensional map of the internet. This is every website on the internet and how it relates to other websites in terms of consumer intent. So every dot that you see on this graph is an individual website, and the proximity of the dots to each other references the capability of the users to visit them with the same intent. And so they are related to each other because users visit them together. So every dot is a website, and the proximity is correlated to similar intent by the consumer, that they visit them in close proximity. As a result, we see the emergence of these neighborhoods of dots or clusters of websites that are correlated to similar intent. This combination of the view of the entire internet and how it relates to each other, the websites, as well as the brand's first-party data signals, allows us to predict the likelihood of interest of an anonymous user that is not tracked for a certain brand at the moment when they are browsing a particular website. So rather, and this is the big kind of change in thinking and the methodology, is that rather than concentrate on the user and their history, which is the tracking or ID-based methodology of ad tech, we are concentrating on the moment at which they are surfing, and we have the opportunity to show them an ad and engage with them. We don't know anything about them. We don't know anything about their particular journey, but we have learned from millions of journeys that we've processed and created this map of the internet where they are in the journey, whether it is predictive of engagement with a particular brand. Next slide. So as a result, ID-free custom AI is behavioral targeting, but without tracking users. No identifiers. This isn't contextual. We're not looking at keywords. We are looking at behavioral patterns, but we're able to do it in a way that is completely anonymous and not tracking individual users. And we understand the behavioral signals about that moment and select the best impressions for your brand. Next slide. One of the benefits of adding this methodology, and especially today in the 2022 holiday season, is that we have seen 80% more unique reach at the same performance as our traditional ID-based tracking, cookie-based solutions. So the 2022 holiday season is a perfect moment in time to reach new customers, because you can take one of two approaches or a combination of them. The first approach, as Max had mentioned, was to look at the insights, the behavioral insights, and to understand current behaviors and utilize that to strategize your engagement with these consumers. But another option that you can use to complement that strategy is to broaden your audience base. The ID-free audience base is a whole pool of new consumers that have hitherto not been reachable. Today, we can reach them. And so because this new tech exists to target these unengageable consumers, and you can really utilize these two methodologies together in order to expand your reach. It is a very specific moment in time right now because of a couple of different reasons. A, this is matured technology in the last year that has been proven to have great performance. And the second thing is, this is new. This is a new audience pool that has not been reached before. By this time next year, in the 2023 holiday season, many, many marketers will have already engaged with these using the new technologies, because today is an opportunity to address a market that has not satiated yet, that has not been engaged with yet. And we can utilize the insights that we have, because the behavioral insights that Max described are available both for your cookie-based, ID-based audiences, as well as your cookie-free, ID-free audiences. We can also see the behavioral insights and trends within the ID-free. As I always like to say, ID-free does not mean insight-free. We can still understand the behaviors of our ID-free audiences, and today are able to engage with them. Like I said, I think my prediction is that today is the perfect storm. The planets, the ad tech planets have aligned, that in this holiday season, complementing your traditional engagement strategies with ID-free strategies is going to open up your reach, your unique reach, to 80% more, utilizing your existing behavioral insights, as well as finding new ones for the ID-free audiences. I think that by next season, they will have been engaged with by many advertisers, and the space will be satiated like the ID-based spaces today. So today's now is the time to utilize not only these insights, but also these new technologies.
Yeah, that's for me compelling. I just wanted to add a note. I mean, as an operations guy, the accessibility in terms of minimal amount of lift it takes to create some of these additional ID-free buckets, that's super compelling for me, because I don't want to spend a lot of time trying to hunt stuff down, and nor do I want to have to bother anyone to onboard more data in order to reach these, to curate more audiences for reach purposes. The fact that you can take existing, signals that have already been received and translate them into an ID-free, environment, so to speak, that's super compelling again, and efficient for me as a marketer.
And I want to say another word in regards to performance. When we talk about these ID-free audiences and we say that they perform just as well, sometimes even better than our traditional ID-based audiences, it's important to note that one day when the third-party cookie will be deprecated, performance measurements and KPIs that we have today will no longer apply. because we are not going to be able to measure and analyze them in the way that we do, because they are tracking based. The industry today is working on new ideas and methodologies in order to convey that notion of performance and what that means. The good thing about right now, because cookies still exist, we are able to run ID-free audiences, but still utilize existing cookie-based KPIs in order to measure their performance. So you are able to compare apples to apples in terms of performance. We still have we still have current existing measurement methodologies that are cookie-based that we can utilize on ID-free audiences, so that you can really understand what your performance is looking like today. In the future, once the cookies are deprecated, there will be new ways that will be developed to measure performance. Yeah. But today, it is a point where you can still understand them based on your existing KPIs.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because for us handling these tactics, being able to perform this viability testing, truly where you can have two ad groups or two tactics that you navigate, one targeting, cookie based and one ID free, and have really easy results to, interpret. That makes it really nice from a reporting standpoint. A lot of platforms are difficult in trying to separate out which users were cookie based, which ones were, based off of a specific, cookie list ID solution. Having two different, completely different not completely different, but two tactics set up makes it really easy to compare and contrast performance. So just wanted to add that remark there. Appreciate that.
So to kind of take a step back and summarize how to prepare for, I think it's how to prepare for the 2022 holiday edition and the holiday season, keeping in mind third-party cookies and where they're going, is that now is the time to test innovative post-cookie targeting solutions. As a proof of concept, it's very easy, as Max said. And if that works, you move on to proof at scale. And like I mentioned, the testing involves looking at performance that is based on your existing KPIs today. So it's very easy to test and compare, like I said, apples to apples. Want to look for solutions that make the most use of limited person level data. As we mentioned, one of the big trends that we see going into the next couple of years is that there's going to be less data available. In the past, we've been inundated with big data, a lot of this tracking data that is more than we knew what to do with, but we're seeing that that's going to get contracted. We're going to have less data. And as a result, we have to figure out how to be able to do prediction and be able to do artificial intelligence with the same, if not better performance, but utilizing less data. Certainly, first-party data is going to become very important, more important than it is today because of that. So we want to rely less on person-level data, but at the same time, find ways to fully leverage any person-level data assets that you have available, that first-party data that we can utilize in order to do an ID-free approach to targeting. And as we said, you can take advantage of this innovation on your own timeline. If it meets your needs today, don't wait for external deadlines. Google has postponed the deprecation of cookies a couple of times, and every time it gets pushed out, marketers feel a sense of complacency and like, all right, we'll deal with it when we have to. But there are two reasons why you shouldn't delay. One is that you don't want to wait for the last minute to try to understand what your alternatives are going to be. But two, and I think more importantly and specifically important for the 2022 holiday season, is that as we have shown, these solutions are not just future solutions. They are solutions that make a difference today in terms of performance and in terms of 80% unique reach increase to new consumers that you have not been able to engage with today. And it is a unique opportunity in time because by next year, these conditions will not be the same.
Absolutely agree on that. I think one thing that we even tend to forget too, handling campaigns on a daily basis, is that this is applicable whether or not cookies go away, right? Because of situations where users can be tracked, like via Safari, knowing that there's a significant amount of population that's unaddressable. How can we effectively bring them back in, so to speak, from targeting?
Yeah, and I think the one of the interesting byproducts of Google's original announcement and then the postponements is that when they originally announced, vendors scrambled to try and find a solution because we thought it was imminent. And the technology was developed and has matured and has been tested. And what we found, even though the deadlines have been postponed, is that it actually is not only a viable solution today, but actually an important piece of your portfolio today.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember when there was this fire alarm sounding and we were trying to, think about how we can actually, again, proof of concept, right? Show that it actually works. And it was really hard from the reporting standpoint. It was very limiting. So again, to your point, I think it's been fantastic that there's been time for solutions to mature and really be able to have the reporting to help, support and substantiate the results. Well, thank you, Gilad. So in summary, just kind of wanted to cover some topics that we've discovered, kind of spent time, discovering today, right? We were talking about respecting user privacy preferences to make users likelier to trust your brand, and rely on audience insights to help you understand your audience better and reach them with things like behavioral targeting. But doing so in a way by leveraging identity-free solutions. Not saying to go away with a cookie solution. There's both options available, and we can leverage the ID-free solutions to help address audiences that previously were unattainable, right? They had opted out of tracking off of their current activity, and this really enables us to be able to expand that reach and again, understand and target moments. Another thing kind of wanted to bring back too is really the importance of segmentation as it relates to segmenting these user groups so that we can run analysis and test them alongside each other. Again, utilizing these pixels in a way that we can track touch points. So I consider that segmentation to help model out user groups, both in an ID based and an ID free solution or method. We want to be able to leverage all these insights again to better gain an understanding of your customer's digital journey, what that user experience is like, without relying on personally identifiable information. And we can leverage all that first party data to expand your audiences and do so intelligently. So we know that these solutions are available now. We know that they are, they can perform, right? And that the ID-free solutions can really help, maneuver a campaign and do more effectively than invasive third-party solutions that are, again, we're talking, facing deprecation at some point. So really, again, glad to have partnered with Dstillery on this journey for ourselves in understanding how to be smarter about looking at the data and exactly what insights we can glean from it. And at the end of the day, it's about producing actionable insight that we can use for our decision making. And that spans everything from planning, from a pre-sales perspective, of course, to activation, and then post-activation, how we can leverage that data for optimization and best decisioning moving forward. So I really wanted to thank your time for everyone to have joined. I'd love to hand things over to Ricky in terms of moderating this. I understand that we have some time set aside for some questions.
Thank you, Max. Yeah, we have a few questions that came in. I'll go ahead and get started here. So Gilad, this one is more towards for you. Question is there a minimum threshold on how much data is needed to get first-party insights?
There ballpark figure, yes, but it's pretty low. I think that we would say that all things being equal, we probably need about 1,000 devices or 1,000 people, information about 1,000 people in order for the signal to be statistically significant enough to build models and to look at insights. That's a very rough ballpark estimate. It really is on a case-by-case basis. And I will say that that first-party data, it's important to note, can be anything from placing a pixel on your website to CRM data that we can ingest offline. So there are many different ways that we can engage with that first-party data to utilize it for insights, as well as to build models and grow out prospecting audiences, whether ID-based or ID-free.
Yeah, I love that the threshold is the same for either situation.
Yeah, and in fact, like I said, that same seed set of people can be utilized for both methodologies. So it's kind of a 2-for-1.
Great, thank you. Next question, Max, this one is for you. If we already have holiday campaigns running, is it too late to apply insights?
Oh, no, not at all. Like Gilad said, if you have first party data that comes from, lower funnel activity that you're capturing, you can take that data, ingest that in, and perform discovery then just to kind of see how things are refined. One thing I really like to do, and it takes a little bit extra work, is to leverage pixels as trackers so that you can deploy them on your paid media right now, even touch points to say something like a video play or even a click through, and then follow that with pixels that are on site and really start to, again, chart out these touch points. So it's never too late to utilize tagging as a form to collect data and then kind of map that in from as a taxonomy to understand what that journey is and then perform insights from there. As long, again, as there's enough activity, the thresholds are being met, you'll be able to sustain some insights there. But yeah, I would highly advise dropping pixels as trackers for creatives. And then again, any first party data that you might be collecting from like things like an email marketing campaign or even like an ad campaign that resulted in some kind of form submit, all that first party data can be onboarded for, again, ongoing analysis.
Great, thanks, Max. This one's for you. This is more about the marketing in moments. So how does the marketing in moments differ from or work with contextual targeting?
So it is different in that it makes the decision differently. With contextual targeting, the data that you use in order to make that decision is looking at keywords on websites. And in ID-free, the decisions that you make are a little bit more intelligent in that you look more at the relationships between those websites based on people's behavior. So it still actually is behavioral targeting, but the way that we utilize the data to score that behavior is not using tracked device data. And so it's different in that it is more intelligent, more sophisticated than contextual, and has better results. When we test, if you test your contextual solutions against our ID-free solutions, you will see that they perform much better than traditional contextual because they're smarter. They utilize the power of artificial intelligence in order to find moments that are predicted to be interesting, not just based on contextual keywords.
All right, thank you, Gilad. Last question that we have lined up, Max. What channels can audience insights be used on?
All channels, actually. So as long as we're able to import that data in, we can collect data from whatever channel activation that you have. And then that data can then be activated against all media types as well. So whether that's native, whether that's display, CTV. I should say the one thing that you can't do, is not certain just yet, is digital out of home. Me and Gilad probably have to have a conversation about whether or not that can be done. But as it relates to your, mobile devices, your tablets, your desktops, anything that occurs there, as well as your connected devices, those can definitely be applicable.
Great. Thank you, Max and Gilad, for participating, and thank you everyone for attending today's session. We will be sending a recording of this webinar to all registrants afterwards, so everyone can look out for that soon. If you do have any questions, feel free to connect with us on social media, or you can reply back to us once we send over the recording. So once again, thank you, Max and Gilad.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. Bye, everyone.